welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Erica with Memory Box Candle Co. And I make videos all about the journey of starting a candle business. And if you are somebody who is just getting into candle making, or if you are getting closer to launching your very own candle business, I do have a free gift to give you. It is a free download. It's a candle business launch checklist that I created for you to be able to follow along and see all of the little tasks that you need to be doing in order to be more prepared for your candle business launch. You can go to ericamariemorris.com/checklist in order to download yours now and have it sent straight to your email. And I really hope it helps you out, and let's go ahead and get right into today's video. All right, so today's video, we are going to be talking about how you can troubleshoot your own candle at home if you are having issues specifically with the hot throw. So a common question I get a lot is, I cannot smell my candle when it's lit. Why is that? What is the reason? And what I decided to do here to kind of give you a visual example of what I mean by variables of the candle, this is exactly what I'm talking about. And this is why it can be hard to actually determine what is the cause of a weak hot throw, because there's so many different variables that come into play in the candle making process. So right here, I do have 9 different variables, and I know that probably a few of you out there could also think of a couple different variables as well that could come into play, but I feel like these are the basic ones that can really affect the hot throw. So we have the vessel, aka just the jar you're using, the kind of wax, the wicks you're using and or just singular wick. This could be the wick size as well as the series of wick. And then we also have the length of the wick. So this is how short you trim the wick prior to actually lighting it during the testing process. We also have the fragrance oil percentage and the actual fragrance oil scent. So the kind of scent, which supplier you're getting it from, the actual, specifically which fragrance oil you are testing with, as well as the temperature the wax is heated to, the temperature the fragrance oil is added to the wax, and then also your pour temperature. So I know that what a lot of new candle makers do when they are getting started with candle making and they produce a candle with a weak hot throw, a lot of people automatically assume that this variable right here is the culprit, that the fragrance oil percentage is causing the issue and they just need to up the fragrance oil percentage and then they will get a better performing candle. And that is not always the case. It's not always just a matter of increasing the fragrance oil percentage. So prior to doing any of these changes, what I want you to do is a couple of things. The first thing I want you to do is actually take a look at this one. This one may be the cause of your issue because there's a lot of information that is kind of going around on the internet, and it can be a lot of kind of confusing information, and a lot of times people are adding in the fragrance oil at too low of a temperature, whether that's in fear of the fragrance oil burning off or whatever it is, but that's not the case. You always want to make sure, no matter what wax you are working with, that you are adding in the fragrance oil at a temperature of 185 degrees Fahrenheit. That is the temperature that I add my fragrance oil to my wax with. And to be honest, this is the main part of my candle making process that I really pay attention to. I do pay attention to this one, obviously, but I don't really as much pay attention to this one. But this one right here is where you are going to have that sweet spot of binding that fragrance oil with the wax to make sure that when you are combining those two things, that it's hot enough for it to bind together, spread throughout the candle, and so that it could possibly increase and give you better performance with your candle. So that would be the first thing that I would change, or just make sure that you're already doing prior to making any other changes to any of the variables. So just make sure that you're adding in your fragrance oil at least 185 to 190 degrees Fahrenheit. And then the next thing that I want you to make sure of is just make sure that the actual scent that you're working with is made for the kind of wax that you are working with. So ways that you can find this out is actually go to the supplier that you purchased your fragrance oil from and check and see if they have a list, or if they say, yes, this is made for soy, or yes, the soy performance is really good, or coconut performance, or paraffin, or whatever it is. And if you can't find that information, there's no shame in reaching out to the suppliers just to make sure that you are working with a fragrance oil that is going to work well with your wax. What I had learned is that not all fragrance oils are designed for all kinds of waxes. So this could actually be a culprit or a reason why you're not getting a good performing candle. Not always that reason, but it's good to start with these just so you're not trying to change things around, and you can get started with that first. And if by chance you are able to look at the reviews of that fragrance oil, a lot of times people are giving more information in their reviews, like, hey, I'm using this with the virgin coconut wax at 9 or 10%, and it works phenomenal, it's beautiful. And then if you're working with that wax and you kind of have an idea like, okay, well, this worked for somebody. So just take a look at the reviews and make sure that the fragrance oil that you're working with is something that is known to be a really good and strong performing oil. I know I've mentioned this in a lot of my previous videos. I personally, with my wax, for all of my testing, I do mango and coconut milk by Candle Science. That has always been my testing oil. I know the scent. I know when it's producing a good, strong hot throw with the blend or the wax that I am testing it with, and that is kind of my go-to. It doesn't necessarily mean that that is everybody's go-to. There's a lot of other really strong, really good scents that you could use. I've also used the white sage and lavender scent by Candle Science. So a good lavender, I know that a lot of people test with that as well. So just make sure that you're finding a good, strong oil that is designed and made for the kind of wax that you are working with. And then from there, you're able to just basically change out one variable at a time in any of these categories. So if you're wanting to start off, let's say, well, I have everything that Erica was just saying, you know, I'm adding it in at 185. I made sure that the scent I'm working with is strong and that it's made for my wax, but I'm only using 6%. So maybe if I did increase it to 8% or 9%, I want to try that first. So you can definitely try that out. And even if you want to do the max fragrance load that your wax can hold, you can definitely try that out and see if that's a cause of concern or a cause of the reason why your hot throw is not where it should be. And then moving on from there, I would actually now take a look at the wick or wicks that you are using. So with the actual series and size of your wick, what I want you to do is when your candle is burning, if it looks like it's tunneling, or if it looks like after a couple hours the flame is really dim and it just doesn't look like a very strong performing candle, that could be a main cause of concern for the actual hot throw of the candle. And that's because if a wick is too small, meaning that the diameter of the jar that you are working with, if the wick is not able to fill up that diameter with a melt pool and get it to a certain temperature to basically throw all of those fragrance molecules into the air, it's not going to cause a good hot throw. So if you notice that the candle is starting to tunnel, or if the flame is really, really dim after, let's say, the first or second burn, and it just doesn't look like a very strong candle, that could mean that you may need to wick up. And what wicking up means, basically just getting a larger wick. So a larger wick in terms of the diameter, so the thickness of the wick, you're going to need to go up within the series that you're working with. So if you're working with a specific series, let's say the LX series, the Eco series, whatever it is that you're working with, I would definitely stay within that wick series prior to moving to another wick series. So you can kind of see how I actually could have broken up this wick section broken into probably 2 to 4 more variables depending on the size, as well as the length of the wick, as well as the series. So you can kind of see how it can be broken up from there. But I would definitely stick with the same series and just try out different sizes of the wick, and just make sure that you're trimming it to 1/4 of an inch prior to burning. Because what I learned in the beginning is that if you trim it higher, so let's say you keep it at, let's say 1/2 an inch or higher, you may notice, depending on the size of the wick, that it will start smoking and sooting, and that's going to interfere with a lot of things as well. Or if your wick is too large, then you might be burning the candle way too fast. It may be getting way too hot. And essentially in that process, it may be suppressing the hot throw of your candle because the candle is burning too hot. So with all of these working together, basically these ones right here, the jar, which is the diameter, the wax that you're working with, and then the wick size, it's really going to all work together in order to get that correct melt pool, the temperature, the way that they all perform together, as well as the fragrance oil percentage and the actual scent working in there in order to create that good performing candle with a really good hot throw. And then if you've exhausted all options, you've done so many different types of wick testing, you've done so many different series and sizes and all that kind of stuff, and you're thinking that it may be the issue with the wax, I would say that's probably not necessarily a last resort, but obviously with this process, my first thought would not be to changing these out right away, especially if those are what you're going to be wanting to work with if you're wanting to start a candle business. I would probably do everything that I could to figure out how to use those before I change those. But if you are seeing other reviews online of people struggling with the wax that you're working with, or if you just kind of don't like working with it and you feel like you've changed everything else, then I would give another wax a try. And yes, you may need to go through this whole process with that wax, with that new wax that you want to work with. But again, this is just kind of the variable process to troubleshoot and determine what is the cause of the poor hot throw within your candle. And I'm hoping that with this process, you're able to kind of see and visually see how the variables could differ and how you only want to change one variable at a time. Because if I changed, let's say, if I changed the fragrance oil scent and I changed the wicks at the same time, and let's say I replaced it with new ones, and then I did my candle, I made the candle and I tested it 2 weeks later and the hot throw was much better, I wouldn't know if it was because of the wicks or if it was because of the fragrance oil scent. So that's why you only want to choose one variable at a time to change out and then test that new candle with. But anyways, that is all for today's video. I really hope this video helped you out with how to troubleshoot your candles and how to visually see what I mean by different variables of the candles and kind of the steps that I would personally take in order to figure out what the hot throw issue is with my candle. And with that, I'm going to end today's video right here. If you enjoyed today's video, make sure to leave it a thumbs up as well as subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Also, don't forget to follow me over on Instagram at Memory Box Candle Co. And I will see you guys in the next video. Bye, guys.